Before we get started, want to bring you a word from our partners over at the Breeders Cup. Winning your in action. It's coming fast and furious from now until pretty much 3 weeks out from the Breeders' Cup. This weekend's race is in Tokyo. The Yasuda Kinen, very important race over there, and likely to produce some starters that might appear in the Breeders' Cup as well. Cafe Faro already earned a spot in the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic, switching to turf and running there. The winner gets an automatic entry to the $2 million Fanduel Breeders Cup Mile. There's travel allowances for horses stabled outside of Kentucky, $60,000 in entry fees paid by the Breeders' Cup, $10,000 award to the nominator. So if you haven't been paying attention to this Win in Your In series and you're on the breeding and racing side of things, you really need to be. And we're going to cover the race in a little bit more detail later in the show. And while we're talking Breeders' Cup, let's talk Horseplayer Happy Hour really quickly. If you missed our seasonal debut, don't worry. We're going to be doing that every Thursday. Much more info to come. Sign up to play on horseplayers.com. $20 entry fee. The house cut goes to thoroughbred charities, including our friends at the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. And Matt and I will be streaming on Thursday from 4 to 5. Find it on our YouTube channel or through Breeders' Cup social media. Thanks once again to our partners at the Breeders' Cup. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our show for the races of Saturday, June 4th. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you in the Brooklyn bunker. Once again, we'll start with a real quick programming note. We're going to be doing a whole standalone show about Monmouth's Saturday card with coverage of the early pick 5, previewing the pick your prize contest, going through some fixed odds stuff, talking about the feature, all kinds of fun stuff. You can look for that in your feed tomorrow, or actually this will probably end up dropping the same day, later today, I'll say. And the reality is it could have already dropped by the time you hear this. But anyway, Monmouth separate from the main show, but we've got a lot of great coverage here, and we're going to kick it off with a man making his triumphant return to the In the Money airwaves. He is from his own eponymous podcast and many other places, including NBC Sports, TV's Matt Bernier. I could say Parenthood's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
Good. This is one of the first times I've been back in my office in the better part of a month. But no, we're good. All is well. Sleep deprived, yes, but you know that when you sign up for what you're getting into. So no complaints. We're all good.
But you're not really getting the full night's sleep. I was going to ask. The occasional person gets lucky and doesn't have to deal with the late night wake up calls and all that stuff.
I'm fortunate. My wife is the one that really is dealing with all the stuff overnight for a number of reasons. But I mean, look, the baby, she sleeps. She's pretty good. She gets 3 to 4 hour stretches. Occasionally, we can push it out to 4.5 hours, and she gets fussy from time to time. But all babies do. So really, big picture, I can't complain. This morning, 5:30. Had to change a diaper, and in the midst of the diaper change, there were more issues. So that's always a good way to wake up. But again, that's what comes with the territory, I guess, right?
How much NHL playoffs has your daughter watched so far?
Oh, quite a bit. We've watched a lot of that. We've watched a lot of NBA. We're going into the finals. We're taping this on Thursday, the night that the NBA finals get going. But yeah, I mean, she was stunned as I was last night to see Vasilevsky get lit up by the Rangers. The Blue Shirts are playing really, really well right now. And I still think Tampa's a better team. But I'll tell you what, if New York keeps playing this way, they're no joke. You're always going to be a contender. You got somebody like Shesterkin between the pipes.
As a lifelong Islander fan, of course, it pains me. And if it's the Lightning, what they did to us the last 2 seasons, it would just be rubbing salt in the wounds. I was at the Mets game yesterday with Perrin. I posted some pictures on social media and was just, she was like, "Daddy, why is every third person wearing a Rangers jersey?" I was like, you don't even know. You don't even know how long and expletive filled that tirade would be, parents. So we're going to skip it for today. But we did enjoy a nice 5-0 victory for the Mets, and I'm not sure that any child has had more desserts in the middle of the afternoon than Perrin did yesterday. And I even admitted, I was like, "Look, this is strategic." She said at some point, "Daddy, why are you saying basically, why are you saying yes to everything I ask you? And I said, it's part of my plan to brainwash you into becoming not just a baseball fan, but a Mets fan. So, and she pushed her luck. Daddy, can we get a selfie? Can we get a selfie with Mr. Met? And, this is not something that you can guarantee going to a baseball game. But late in the game, we had the opportunity. I haven't sent that one out on social yet. I will. And it was just one of those things. The circumstances came perfectly together. He and Mrs. Met were doing the thing on the dugout with the trumpet. And then I just, I got the exact moment where he's, high-fiving Perrin. It was a day for the ages, hopefully one that she'll remember for a long time.
I said to my wife, my family is all Red Sox fans. My wife's family is all Red Sox fan. Grew up in Massachusetts. She does have family in New York, though. They're all Mets fans. I said, it's going to be our luck that Letty, our daughter, is going to go rogue and become a Yankees fan. I can just feel it. It's just one of those things. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully she doesn't turn to the dark side. But you never know. And if she does, so be it. It'll make for some good entertaining watching.
But one thing that Mets fans and Red Sox fans can always agree about, we just have to make sure not to bring up 1986 and everything's fine. And you're young enough that you don't have those scars. So it works out well.
No, my only real scar was 03. I was fortunate enough to miss out by a few years on the 86 debacle. I've been fortunate. I've only ever seen good things.
It's impossible. That's impossible. I mean, for someone my age, grew up with so many Red Sox fans and older, the idea that there are Red Sox fans out there that didn't know the pain and suffering that you all, like even Mets fans we felt bad for you. That's how bad it was.
I'll tell you what, though. Look, you can't complain because they've won as much as they have. But lately, it's basically been every other year. They've been good or terrible. So, that's a bit of a wild card, a bit of a roller coaster. That's not a fun ride, but I guess there's always that outside possibility that, next year's the year. They have been playing better as of recent, though.
You have nothing to complain about in the big picture of life. I swear we're going to talk about what we're meant to in this segment eventually, which is the Belmont Pick 6. I do want to just give a quick shout to the ongoing return of Horseplayer Happy Hour. By the time this drops, the first game will have gone down. We're going to be going every week now. And one of the things, and this was an idea that you really helped push, Matt, and I appreciate that, is we're going to have a lot more consistency in terms of the schedule this year. And I think that's going to help increase participation and get people super excited about this. The basics are, it's a feeder for Saturdays, BCBC, costs $20. The VIG, the house cut, goes to Thoroughbred Aftercare, TRF, TAA. And then we have this tour, this interconnected series where 2 BCBC seats added to the prize pool at no cost to players. But I know that, and I know I want you to speak to the consistency idea, because I do think that's something that's cool and new about it.
Well, I just, the bigger piece, we talked about it a little bit in planning, the idea of last year and in the first year, I don't really view as one that counts, because we were doing that out of necessity for all of our sakes to kind of get away from everything that was going on.
Last pandemic distraction. Yeah, it was born of the pandemic, and really just you, me, Peter Rotundo, JK, like sitting around with nothing to do. It was like, hey, let's do this.
And last year we decided to make it a little bit more formful and try to put something together. We knew that there was an appetite for it. People seemed to enjoy it the first time through. So we took it another level last year, where we had the prizes available and the season-long, run and the postseason as well. But I think one of the things that made it a little more difficult was we had varying times throughout the year. We would do it on a Thursday. We'd do it on a Friday. We'd have different start times with these different days. This year, the goal is to be very consistent on Thursday afternoons, ideally at 4:00. That's where we're starting here for week 1. And again, there will be some instances where things will have to be tweaked. But for all intents and purposes, we want it to be a sort of appointment viewing playing kind of thing. You just immediately think of, okay, well, I know on Thursday, the contest is going to start right around 3:30. The boys will come on at 4:00, go right through 5:00, and we'll have an answer by then. I think any kind of repetition, that always makes things a little bit easier for people to get it ingrained in their heads. So hopefully that's what we're going to be dealing with for the majority of this season.
That's the idea. Next Thursday, every Thursday, come and support us. Horseplayers.com is where you play. We'll be pushing the links on social, etc. And I'm going to try to keep this pretty link going too in the moneypodcast.com/HHH if you just want an easy way to go on and get directly into the game. And as far as where you watch the video, our YouTube channel is going to be live streaming it. We've picked up a lot of steam there. I think that's going to help us drive some movement in this thing. And then also Breeders Cup Social, their Facebook page, their Twitter, my Twitter, your Twitter. It's going to be pretty easy to find if you keep your eyes open. All right, time to dive in to the appointed topic of this video, which is the pick 6 at Belmont on Saturday. I hope, I'm pretty sure we're going to be back on the turf. We had a ton of rain last night, but I think the weather's going to be okay between now and then. We kick off with race number 5, 3-and-up filly and mare New York bred maidens going 7 furlongs on the turf. Matt, I'll get you to kick us off here. How do you want to light this candle?
I mentioned to you, Pete, some of these races I have stronger opinions than others. This is one that, there are a fair bit of unknowns in here. I think Shinful makes some sense. Anytime you have a trainer like Rich Schosberg, who all of a sudden attracts Irad Ortiz Jr. with a second-time starter, Lasix go on, showed speed in that debut, now second time out. You have all these positives to pull from. The second and third place finishers in that most recent run. They came back and earned buyers that were a little bit on the subpar side, but I think there are enough positives to look at a horse like Shinful and think that she's live. I also thought I guess technically it's the 5. I have all my PPs out before the program numbers ended up showing up, but Lisa's vision for Jorge Abreu and Jose Ortiz, I thought made some sense. Bet down to favoritism in the debut. Thought really ran effectively a winning kind of race. Made the move, made the front, and just got run down at the end. I thought it was a good enough effort, one that you can build off of. All things considered, I thought she was the one that was the best, that was closest to the pace in that debut, and I expect a better effort here. I think she's a logical contender.
I have your 2 in the mix as well. I put Shinful on top, showed a lot of speed for an unfancied firster on debut, and the Schosberg numbers, second time to first time, they go up nearly times 3, and then just that pace alone might have the pace to lead from gate to wire. You made excellent points about the makeover with Irad and the Lasix as well. One long shot you didn't mention that I would consider throwing in, at least I think is going to be a long shot. The 9, That's a Superstar. That was a pretty good turf debut. Kind of a tricky trip in that spot. Still clocked in third. Should be a big price. Going to enjoy the cutback. And I think can get a great trip in this spot as well. And then you mentioned Lisa's Vision, my other backup. Very logical off of the known form in here. Actually, I'm so sorry. I'm getting confused with my own notes. I was going to say something about a first-time starter, but that's the 6. Sarah's Splendor is the logical first-time starter, and the 5, Lisa's Vision, the one that makes sense off the known form. So just to recap, I'm going to play the 1 essentially as an A, but then use plenty of Bs with the 9, 5, and 6 to get things kicked off in race number 5. Let's move to race 6. We've got $10,000 claimers going 7 furlongs on the dirt in this spot. And this is a race where I thought that the number 5, FF Rocket, stood out a bit. Should get a great sit off the speed, dropping in class. Good combination of tactical speed and finish. Should play well against this assembled group. A couple others to mention. The 8, Joycey Has Pizzazz. I was a little bit worried given the expected pace, which I don't know if it's going to be that fast, but I still want to use based on the trips from the last 2 runs. Didn't break and middle moved wide last time, and I thought just 2 back, lost all chance at the start. You go back to the running lines, 3 and 4 back would be very dangerous. And then I have nothing clever to say about the 4, Xavion, other than the fact that I think the horse just fits on figures and form. So in here, I was going to look at 5, 8, and 4. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a muddy picture for me. I think the pace is on the more moderate side. That could throw a bit of a monkey wrench into things. But I'm with you. I'm with FF Rocket. I just think this is a good move going from 16 down to 10 from Rob Atras. The run 3 starts back, I think is good enough to win in a spot like this against softer company. Again, the pace situation could be a little bit of a concern, but he's been chasing some faster ones recently. I'm hopeful Carmouche can have this one a little bit more forwardly placed, kind of get the jump on anybody else that views as sort of a main contender, and perhaps get the job done, albeit at what's probably going to be a shorter price.
Let's talk about race number 7. We've got 3-and-up filly and mare allowance types going 7 furlongs on the turf, and Matt Bernier will keep it with you.
Yeah, I thought Clement's coupled entry in here, Anador and Romanosa, were very live. I thought it was interesting to see, though, Clement's numbers with the first-time shippers coming from overseas, they're not spectacular, and I'm always curious to see who rides who. If this horse had Rosario aboard, I'd probably be a little bit more interested. Instead, Rosario is on Anador, a horse who is a bit of a more proven commodity, has run really well in some of these spots. I'm expecting a good run here. I guess the one that I was most interested in, though, that I'm hopeful is going to be a price again, I have all my PPs before morning line and before program numbers. I thought Monastella was a little bit sneaky in here for Pat Biancone. Jose Ortiz takes them out. This is a horse who she's been involved in some serious pace situations. The most recent one in the Modesty, forward, flattened out at the end. 3 starts back, forward with a hot pace at Gulfstream. Just couldn't quite hang on. 2 starts back, the pace never really materialized, and she tried to rally from off of it. I'm more interested in the fact that A, she's going to be forward, but B, the turn back to 7/8, I think is going to really do wonders for her. Mona Stella is the one that I really want to try to get tucked into.
We've got the same horses. I put Mona Stella on top. I really like the trip that I envisioned for her. Going to appreciate the drop back out of stakes company. And you mentioned about being a flow move up too, coming out of some of these races as well. I like Mona Stella quite a bit in this spot. The entry too sharp looking to ignore. The ladder's French form is likely, going to put her right there. And, you made the point about the stat, but I'm still too scared to leave out. And then Anador looked to be pace compromised last time and should go better this time around. I will just give a quick shout for the 2 Stony Point strong figures going shorter and figures to improve in her 3rd career start for a very patient trainer in Shug McGahee. Let's move on to race number 8. We've got a starter allowance going 1 mile on the dirt. It's sort of funny. I just the way it turned out, I'm tending to like 3 horses a race in the sequence, and it's just going to be about how I grade them into A's and B's. I definitely want Looney Sema as an A. The 3 hard-trying sort should get a good run through, I think, in a race where the fast gallop that's likely should set him up for success. I think that the slight turn back in distance suits him as well. The 6 Royal Tryst might be too far back early, but probably has the best late kick of this bunch. And if Looney Sema gets involved early, I could see Royal Tryst rolling by late. Another one to mention is the 2 Invisible War, second off the layoff. And notable fact on that one, I thought the form of the barn very bad in early May when Invisible War was last seen. Started to pick things up since. 3, 6, and 2 for me in the 8th. How do you see it?
I only have 2 horses in here, but they're 2 of the ones you mentioned. I'm going 32 in here. Looney Sema has paired up career buyer tops of 85. I think this one takes a step forward in this spot, and if he does, he's the most likely winner in here. But if for whatever reason this horse has a little bit of an issue or can't end up making it out to the front, I thought Invisible War was interesting. You go through and take a look. 1 for 10 lifetime. The only win came in the only 1-turn race of this one's career, and also I think the figs for that race, both Buyer and Timeform US are they're in line. They both suggest it's a slower run. But when I see what this horse has done effectively all around it, I can't help but think that the number is actually better than what the 69 Buyer or the 84 pace unadjusted number from Timeform would suggest. You had the 5th place finisher in that race come back and win next out with the 66. The 5th and 6th place finishers in that race, they both came back and improved their Buyer speed figures 29 and 17 points. I have a funny feeling that 69 is probably closer to a low to mid 80, which would be right on par for Invisible War. If you get that race, the blinkers go on, back to 1 turn. I think Invisible War is interesting for Cassie.
I think that's a really good note on that one and a reason to move up for sure. Let's talk about the feature, the Pennine Ridge 3-year-old colts in this grade 2 going 1 mile and an 1/8 on the inner turf. Matt Bernier, who's your idea of the winner?
Well, look, I'm not going to really talk about Chad in here. I mean, look, Chad makes sense. No surprise. I'm not going to be telling you anything you don't know about these horses. The only one that I was interested in, and I have no idea how they're going to bet the race, is Emmanuel. And, he's bred to be a turf horse, as good as he's been on dirt. Maybe he hasn't lived up to the expectation of the hype that we initially thought perhaps he could be on the main track, but I don't think he's disgraced himself in a couple of big graded stakes races. Take a look at the Bluegrass. He ran into Zandon and Smile Happy, both a couple of very, very good 3-year-olds as far as the classic races are concerned. Again, he's bred to be a turf horse. The 2nd dam was stakes placed on the grass. She was 2 for 9 lifetime on the weeds. More than ready. We don't need to really talk much about him as far as the turf influence is concerned. And someone had brought it up to me years and years ago. And I'm always a little reluctant to just overly buy into it. But these 3-year-olds that early in the year run on dirt or the Triple Crown Trail, when they move to the turf, sometimes there can be a bit of class relief because they've been taking on the best of their generation. I'm not saying that that's 100% the case here, but I'm going to be very interested to see what you get from Emmanuel and how he's bet.
We see it the exact same way. There is some good turf breeding here, and you already sort of broke it down. More Than Ready's in there, hard spun, and that 2nd dam, I picked that up too. Had some very nice looking turf form. And the simplest way to describe it is just looks to be the fastest horse on paper. You tend to trust Todd Pletcher in a spot like this, at least I do, and then throw into the mix that the horse reportedly worked well on grass the other day, and you've got a lot of reasons to like Emmanuel. I will also mention the 4 Napoleonic War. catching the eye. The Chad barn just so hot. And then, but for a terrible trip in the Transylvania, would likely be undefeated. Interesting to know if Franco chose unanimous consent or if it's just the way that things shook out in here. But Pratt in the irons isn't a bad thing. I probably will throw in unanimous consent on some backups as well. But yeah, I'm very interested to see this race. It's a short field, but it's definitely a little bit interesting, and some potential players for other races down the line. Call it a press on the 6 with a little bit of 4-7 for me, which leads us to our nightcap, because we're running out of time for this segment, but we certainly have time to do this race without rushing too much. 3 and up fillies and mares, $75,000 maiden claimers, 1 mile on the turf. How are we going to get paid?
1-3-10 for me. We'll start with investment income down on the inside. Again, I really don't need to go into too much detail about why you should have Chad Brown in some of these races with the way he's going and the way he always goes. But this one specifically, the last turf race 2 starts back, I didn't think had any kind of pace to run into and really still did finish with some interest. I think you should get hopefully a little bit of a better setup here in this spot. The 3-horse Birthday Time goes out for Todd, gets class relief. Bit of an odd trip, was forwardly placed, but there were other horses up in and amongst the vanguard and eventually went up on through. Couldn't get the job done. Gets class relief going from Gulfstream up here. Picks up Pratt as well. I think this one makes sense. But the horse I'm most interested in, and maybe this would be more of an individual race play than necessarily keying in a multi like a pick 6 or the pick 5. I think Cadency is interesting for Billy Morey. Morey's barn is red hot, especially off the claim. The distance I don't think is going to be an issue. Rallied into a hot fraction in that most recent run. Couldn't quite get the job done. Taken for 40. Now we move up to 75. Blinkers go on. I think there's a lot to like about Cadencia, who should be a decent price given the connections involved with some of these other runners.
I looked at Cadencia a long time, ultimately decided to leave off of what I was going to talk about on the show, but I'm going to put back in as a B based on your say so. I also liked investment income and Birthday Time, had positives on both of them that you, I think, laid out pretty well. I put the 6 Miss Bonnie T on top. Likely needed the seasonal reappearance on the turf, as many of the donk trainees do. Looks to me like the form and figure horse on the drop into Maiden Claiming Company. I definitely want 6s on my ticket as well. So 6, 1, 3, 10 for me. 10, 1, 3 for Matt. If you want a digest of all our picks and extra content, sign up for In the Money Plus, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus, and make sure to join us next week for Horseplayer Happy Hour. And of course, on the early week show, we got a lot going for Belmont Week. Sounds like I'm going to have a special guest, Kevin Connolly, the podcaster and actor and producer and director. You know him from such shows as Entourage. He also played Bill Mack in the Secretariat movie. Had a great chat with him today, a little pre-production call. Going to have him on the early week show. Lots of good stuff. Keep it locked. InTheMoneyPodcast.com. Matt, thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon.
Happy hour time.
Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Monmouth Park. If you haven't been paying attention, they've got fixed odds now, being a big hit with punters. So far, just Monmouth at Monmouth. That may change. We love this win early pick 5. We've been covering that every Saturday. This Saturday, we've got a whole special Monmouth show. You can find that in the podcast feed. We go over all 12 races, Matt Vagvolgi and Dallas Baker. We've told you, by the time you're seeing this, it may be too late to sign up for Pick Your Prize, but take a shot. If you want to play and you're not involved yet, give Brian Skirka a ring or contact your ADW for that one. And again, we're going to keep the coverage of Monmouth going. The fixed odds, the 50-cent win early pick 5, win early, win often. And then I love the fixed odds logo too. You put value in the palm of your hand because the odds you bet are the odds you get. Learn more, monmouthpark.com. If you're at Monmouth this weekend, holler at me. I'll be there. Contact page, inthemoneypodcast.com. That goes straight to my email, or hit me up on Twitter at LoomsBoldly. 3, 2, 1. Next in, going to bring in one of the show's stalwarts to help us kick off a new program with our friends north of the border up at Woodbine. Our Woodbine 2022 coverage starts today. Going to be hearing a lot about Woodbine on these shows from here on in, with the big focus on Queen's Plate and Woodbine Mile, but also the Saturday Pick 4s in general have a lot of good action, and that's what we're going to be getting into today. You read him all the time on inthemoneypodcast.com. You see him on these airwaves. He's Nick Tammaro. Nick, how are things?
Doing great, Pete. Glad to be talking about Woodbine. It means summer's here, and we're getting on to bigger and better things.
That's right. And we're going to talk about this pick 4 on the show to kick things off. But in general, what do you like about playing the races up there?
Oh, the turf racing is obviously great. Both turf courses are just exceptional in terms of condition, and the EP Taylor course gives you a variety of different distances, which we'll see a little bit of in this sequence, including a 7 furlong nightcap, which I think is just a really fun distance because you've got horses cutting back and you've got one stretching out a little bit. You'll see if that turf sprint speed can match up with good route finishing ability. And that's really my favorite thing. I don't really mind the synthetic surface either. I think if you handle it in isolation, it can actually be somewhat fruitful. But it's certainly not something we're as used to now in American racing with not as many synthetic surfaces. But I think we get a good variety and a nice mixture.
We start with race number 7. Speaking of that synthetic surface, we've got 3-year-old maidens going 6 furlongs. How do you want to get this pick 4 kicked off?
I thought it was a little bit of a chalky start, all things considered. Number 8, Mr. Crowley, ran a bang-up race on debut, in my opinion, for the optional claiming 40. He was actually not in for the tag in that race and is this time around. I don't think it's that big a deal. I think his connections probably learned a little bit more about exactly where he fits. The thing about his debut that you have to like is that he got involved in a pretty hot early pace, ended up slugging it out all the way, tired in the final furlong or so. But I think he'll be wound quite a bit tighter for this second outing. He's a horse who probably tipped his hand a bit in the morning, and that was part of the reason why he was bet down to 3-1 in the debut. So he's he's who I would pick on top. I'd also use the 6 Dixie's Flatter. I have no argument against the likely favorite, who goes second off a layoff as well and finished a competitive third last time out. This horse has shown some ability early and late, just not really all that much willingness to win. I think this might be the right spot class-wise, though, as Josie Carroll, who's really firing on all cylinders, moves him in for the tag for the first time. 6-8 is ace for me, 3 is a backup.
All right, we are very, very similar. I had the same 2 on the A line in the other order. I just put Dixie's Flatter on top off the idea that this one's unlucky to still be a maiden. I thought this is a significantly weaker race, and I think is going to get a great stalking trip. And as for Mr. Crowley, you made the relevant points, and then just pace-wise, looks like one who might be able to get loose and sneak away. 6 and 8 for me in race 7. Which brings us to race number 8, where we've got an interesting graded stakes race in the Grade 2 Royal North. Fillies and mares, 4-year-old and up, going 6.5 on the turf. And this is a spot where I hate to say it, but I think I've got to be against a Woodbine segment podcast favorite. One of Drew Coatney's favorite horses is Boardroom. We've talked about Boardroom so much over the last couple seasons. Speaking of Drew, he will be back on these shows. We had some folks asking for him. He's actually moving this weekend. He would have been right here with us covering Woodbine, and he'll be back as the meet goes on. But I got 2 issues with Boardroom in this spot, Nick. One is the fact that the turf seems like an experiment, a departure. And what worries me is that she broke a little slow last time. We've talked before on the show about the breaking slow, potential sign of going off form. And then to change up the game here and go on to the other surface just makes me think that maybe today's the day we should take a little bit of a shot against Boardroom, as good as she's been to us and as much as I like her. I was looking at the number 2, In Good Spirits, as a logical runner for Al Stahl on the stretch out, has, I think, the right blend of speed and stamina to potentially get the job done in here. And I didn't want to rule out number 1, Lady War Machine, at a big price. What did Lady War Machine do the last time over this course and distance? Well, won a stakes race by 3. Off the layoff, we'll see if she's ready to fire, but maybe that work 2 back says that she is. I thought she was interesting at a potential price in this race, listed at 12-1 on the morning line. So I'm going to look to press up the 1 and 2. Still working on my backups. I'll finalize something by the time we send those around for the plus notes. But very curious to get your take on this one. Do you think I have the right idea or the wrong idea in trying to oppose Boardroom in this spot?
Yeah, definitely the right idea, I would say. I think it's an opportunity to try and take on the favorites. I wanted to as well, and actually had penciled in the 2, 3, and 8 as the horses that I wanted to focus on. In Good Spirits being one of them. I thought her Unbridled Sydney last time out is probably even better than it looks on paper. She was 4th after chasing a relatively hot pace. I don't think that's necessarily her game. I think there's also something to be said for horses that have a little bit of recency coming into this race. So I want to give her a nod in that regard. I think it's interesting that Al Stahl is willing to ship her up for this race. The 3 Jeannie B has been competitive on turf multiple times in the past, including missing in this race by a nose last year. She goes 3rd off the layoff layoff, moving back to the turf course. Her effort last time out on the synthetic, I thought, was very solid, all things considered. And I'm a little intrigued by the 8, Super Sensational, who the dam is a half to Bulletin. It's really more of a dirt pedigree on the dam side. But the dam's a half to Bulletin, who, of course, won the inaugural Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. And Super Sensational is a horse that when she got good last year, she was much more forward and much handier early. And I think that that kind of a slow break and some trouble along the way put her really behind the 8 ball in the Raven run. I'd rather have her at a bigger price off the layoff than a horse, for example, like Amalfi Coast. And I'm with you. I didn't love that Boardroom was a little sluggish out of the gate, didn't quite have the same gusto start to finish last time out. She may end up winning, but I'll relegate her more to the backup lines and concentrate as A's on the 2, 3, and 8.
I like it. Do you want me to list any particular backups, or were you thinking of this as
I had the
more
1, 5, and 6 written down, so I pretty
Gotcha.
much covered all the bases total.
It's that kind of race. You can absolutely do that, but I still think there's a chance to pick up some equity if we can beat those favorites in the spot. Let's move to race 9. We're going to flat 5 on the inner. Fillies and mares 3 and up in this allowance race field of 7 going postward. And Nick, we'll keep it with you.
You know, interesting bunch, and I think the 5/8 distance is really something to keep in mind in terms of the importance of it, because it's such a pace oriented race, and I don't think there's a confirmed front runner. But I'm intrigued by the 2 inside horses, Owens Tour Guide and High Bobby, both of whom I think can be forwardly placed, and I'm not going to be surprised if either of them stick around. In fact, there's an argument to be made that each of them might be better on the turf, given the way High Bobby ran in a 5 furlong turf race last year at Woodbine. I understand it was a 3 life claimer, but earned a speed figure that day that kind of sticks out still in terms of it being one of her better races. Similar situation with Owens Tour Guide, having won at 6 furlongs now a couple of times on the turf. And obviously there's more synthetic racing at Woodbine for the most part than there is turf racing. But I thought each of them looked very intriguing getting back to the lawn. The 5 Amalfi Sky was one that I wanted to give a little bit of a shot, second off the layoff too. Ran well in this one's turf debut, which came back last year in August. Not going to hold the poor stake try against her. So I thought this was another opportunity to maybe inject a little value into the sequence. I'm going to use the 1, 2, and 5 as A's and back up with the 3 and 6.
I was drawn to the 3 in this spot. I know it's a long layoff for Super Munnings, and I don't love the short price tag projected on the morning line, but this one, with some good looking workouts coming back to the races, I think on her figures and form, she makes a whole lot of sense. And it's interesting when you plot the pace of this race, as you point out, not really a confirmed front runner, and a horse like Super Munnings might just find herself in a great stalk and pounce type spot. But I'm spreading in here as well. I thought that the 1 and the 2 made sense, and the Drexler runner, number 6, Millennium Force. This is a horse that has some good turf form back in the day. Again, like if I'm against because 2 to 1 in the morning line in a salty group doesn't feel great to me. But this also is not a runner that I'd want to leave off my ticket. So I think we're both going to end up spreading in here with my official run looking something like the 3 and the 2 on the top line and the 1, 5, and 6 on the back line. I'm basically using a modified all in this race. You're not getting a whole lot of great stuff from me when it comes to race 9 at Woodbine, but we'll see how it plays out. It is an interesting contest. Let's move to race 10. This is that 7 furlong turf event that you mentioned. Allowance types once again 3 and up, fillies and mares, and we've got a big full field for you to answer the key question about, Nick. How are we going to get paid?
You know, it's a big full field, but it really looks to me like Ready Lady is a bit of a standout coming out of a couple of 1 other thens in Kentucky. She ran well in both of those, in my opinion, maybe a little bit more so at Churchill last time out than Keeneland. But in a way, looking at it from a pace perspective, she may have kind of taken the worst of it at Keeneland. And she looks like a great candidate cutting back to 7 furlongs. She won at this distance on debut. I'm hoping that having been in some races with early tempos that were on the faster side, she won't be too out sprinted in the opening couple of furlongs, mainly because there's not really an abundance of speed in here. And I feel like I can kind of satisfy that requirement by also using the 14 She's a Dream, who looks like kind of the main speed from the outside. I'm not expecting Luis Contreras to put her on any kind of all-out send, but her better races last year came when she was a little bit more engaged early, and so I'm hoping that she gets a forward trip. And I was going to try and close it out with the 3 and 14. I'll use the 4, 6, and 9 as backups. Maybe the most interesting of those is the 9 Saki for Josie Carroll coming over after previously racing for Jean-Claude Rouget, ran in the Mazarine to close out 2021, but broke her maiden at this 7 furlong distance in France. Granted, it was at a lesser type of racetrack, but this is a horse who probably doesn't need to improve terribly much in order to contend here, and is going to be a pretty big price.
I had 2 of the 3 that you mentioned. I mean, I agree with everything you say about Ready Lady. Absolutely love the cutback for this runner. I think this course is going to suit really well, as she showed it did by winning over this course and distance on debut. Just everything, lots of arrows point in that direction. And I did think Sake was the interesting alternative. Has some of that overseas form that certainly looks good enough to be a big player in here, and looks to have the best closing kick. I don't expect it to set up for a closer, but sometimes, it's one of those things. How many times am I happy when I have who I think is going to be the best closer on the ticket? I'll take another look at the others you mentioned, Nick, but I think mostly going to be 3 and 9 for me to wrap up this Saturday late pick 4 at Woodbine. So here's what we're going to do, Nick. I'm going to take a break because I've got a lot going on here with heading down to Monmouth, etc. I got some stuff I got to do, some bags that need to be packed. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to leave you to host the next segment for our friends at Lone Star, and then I'll come back at the end. How's that sound?
Sounds like a plan to me. I'm ready.
Today's show brought to you in part by our friends at Lone Star. Been really enjoying covering Lone Star this meet. Want to highlight once again that Players Pick 5 with its 12% takeout, and also the Lone Star the Lone Star 6 shooter. How can I get that wrong? With 12% takeout. Both of those pay out consos if you miss one leg. There's also a $50,000 guaranteed late pick 4 every Sunday. Next up, we've got the Summer Turf Festival. We're going to be promoting the heck out of that. That's July 16th. 4 stakes totaling $750,000, all on turf. And there's going to be another NHC tournament there with a $1,000 buy-in. It's all bankroll. In other words, the prizes are added to the pool. Great stuff. Check it out. LoneStarPark.com.
Up next, Pete has stepped aside, so I am here, left, of course, with our dear friend Jessica Paquette to go over some races at Lone Star Park as part of their late pick 5. I should say their only pick 5 on Saturday afternoon. Jessica, how goes it?
It goes. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm here in the Lone Star State, but we're going to almost switch positions next week. I'll be up in New York for most of the week, and you will be down here at Sam Houston. I'm going to get the booth all ready. I'll put in an air freshener or something like that if it needs it, so that it's more suited for you. It doesn't stink, I promise. But you will be down here calling the quarter horse races at Sam Houston, and I'm sure we'll both be keeping one eye on what's going on Saturday afternoon at Lone Star.
I think it'll be a great weekend overall. If you could do something about warming up the booth, though, it is so cold up in that announcer's booth.
Well, actually, Mother Nature will help out with that, I think. And it's funny. Thursday afternoon, by the time that racing starts, when I get into the booth at about 3:35 or so, the sun has baked the window. But what I will make sure of, and it will help you this go around, is I will not pull the long shade down that keeps some of the sun out. So I'll let it be a perfect hot box for you when you get.
Yeah, I'd like it to be a sauna if possible.
We're looking for it to be 85 or 90 at least. Let's get into this pick 5 at Lone Star on Saturday afternoon. They are, of course, on the back of their big day on Monday afternoon. Big congratulations to them. Over $4 million in total handle on the Lone Star Million card. Great to have those big races on Memorial Day back. A little bit more of a run-of-the-mill type sequence for us to look through here on this Saturday afternoon, but I know you and I have no promise with that. And the first leg is a 12-5 maiden claimer at 6 furlongs on the main track. One of your favorite trainers in Texas looks pretty well represented with number 1, Angie, at the office. That, of course, is Ronnie Cravens III.
Yeah, and that's where I went here. This field does not look like the toughest bunch to ever assemble in a starting gate. This one's dropping in for 12-5, claimed for 15 last time. Ronnie's really sharp, getting a horse first off the claim, hits around 21%. She looks well spotted here, well meant. I think she does everything to get the job done. And she has just enough speed out of the gate. That kind of speed in this against this sort of field is more than you need.
I agree, and I thought it was one of those where one of the things that I learned a lot about Ernesto Valdez Jimenez in watching at Sam Houston, and I followed enough Lone Star to see him continue to do this, is he is just very shrewdly aggressive. right? I mean, when he sees that there's going to be an edge, he takes it. And Summer Cat's speed is likely to have been dulled a bit by going the mile last time out. So I think that it is really Angie at the office's race to lose on the front end. And I do think that this is going to end up playing out as a pretty good claim, all things considered. I felt like the alternative in here was Sister Sis, mainly just because of the class drop. I don't love the Delta form, but those speed figures do look like they make her somewhat competitive.
Yeah, I suppose so. I think it really depends what kind of price you're getting on this horse. It's tough to take this horse at a really short price for me. I think she's shown exactly what she is.
Yeah, I agree. The apprentice, Simon Camacho Benitez, has ridden better at Lone Star than he did at Sam Houston. I think getting a little experience is definitely making a bit of a difference. That is the opening leg of this late pick 5. Let's go on to race number 6, leg 2, which of course will also kick off the pick 4. It is at 5 furlongs on the turf. I can let you know that the Dallas-Fort Worth area got some much needed rain yesterday. Picked up, I think, a couple of inches of rain with a quick shower, and that's only going to help the turf course. Where did you land here in this second leg, Jess?
Well, for as clean cut as that first race in the sequence was to me, I think this race is actually very deep. Summer Sangria, number 7, just ridiculously consistent. I think she gets a little bit of pressure out front, but I think she's the class of this group. I do wonder if number 4, Stalemate, gets kind of the pace setup that she requires to get the job done. So Stalemate, my top selection. Summer Sangria, really tough to leave off a ticket, though.
Yeah, I felt similarly. Summer Sangria and Blue Darter both looked like major players to me. I also thought that a little bit of a case could be made for Aiken to be, who was a pace compromised last time out, trying to rally into it and pick up the phone's gotten really sharp. Stalemate also, who represents the same barn that our top pick in the first leg is from, looks like a horse who finally put it all together last time out, though this is a much tougher engagement as far as you look at it class-wise than that was, with this being an open 15 and that being a 3-life event. I also thought that the 1 My Golden Bling was not without chance, did run well 2 starts back at 30-1, big upset that night, obviously. We'll see if she can run back to that performance, but it is a race, I think, where contention runs deep. Could you see yourself in a pick 5 going 3 or 4 deep here?
Yeah, I'm really comfortable singling Angie at the office in race 5. And then I'm going to probably go 4 deep in this race with the 4, 5, 6, and 7. There's just a lot of different ways pace dynamic, I think, wise this race can shake out.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought you could use any combination of the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 primarily, and I would probably even use a little bit of the 1. On to race number 7, third leg of this pick 5 sequence. It is a maiden special weight event at 6.5 furlongs on the main track. Couple of second-time starters figure to dominate the attention in the wagering. I'm speaking, of course, of the rail-drawn Jackie Flash, as well as number 4, Tyga. Each of them, I think, did enough on debut to be given pretty serious consideration, though I would say if the morning line is right, I would much rather have Jackie Flash at 6-5 than Tyga at 9-5.
1000%. A horse like Tyga, may not be a world beater, but more valuable as a broodmare. So obviously eyes are on getting that maiden win kind of wherever and however you have to get it. Her female family actually isn't all that much. I kind of did a deep dive to her pedigree to take a look and see if anything stood out to me. The thing that stands out is I think this horse wants to go 2 turns. I'm not entirely convinced she's really a sprinter type. Jackie Flash offers, I think, a little bit more value and has some upside here. That was a really educational debut. He has a lot of room. She has a lot of room to move forward.
Agreed. And I do think, and with all due respect to Weston Hamilton, this is a pretty big jockey change to Rye Eccleberry, a strong, aggressive rider who's likely to put this filly in the mix maybe a little bit sooner. I don't think Weston did anything wrong on debut. Sure. Matt Hebert has had no luck whatsoever at this meet. 7 second and third place finishes with no wins. This one looks like she's really positioned to win, and I'm expecting her to be pretty tough. The only other horse that I would probably mention as a potential contender, and it's mainly because of how well his horses have run at Lone Star, is the 2 Tap Me a Text for Todd Fincher. Fincher came down to Sam Houston in 2021, opted to stay at home in New Mexico in 2022, and he's now made another foray into Texas racing, running a slew of horses at Lone Star, and he's currently 5 for 10 at the meet and had a big on Monday. Yeah, it's been a good move, so I could see maybe using Tap Me a Text as a backup to Jackie Flash. Feels like a reasonable approach. Let's go on to race number 8. 2 more to go in this 5-race sequence. And these are $10,000 beaten claimers. Look to me like a race where contention ran relatively deep here too, because, I'm not really dying to knock anybody out of the way to bet on Fra Moro in this particular spot. And I think it's a relatively wide open affair. Where were you in this one, Jess?
I think this is super wide open. And I think number 10, Dreams of Valor, Broberg is always very dangerous first off the claim. But I'm going for a horse that I think may offer a little bit of value in number 4, Irish Expectations. You mentioned Matt Hebert, kind of just having some bad luck this season. A good horseman who just needs to break through. And this one's been quietly running well against pretty decent company in his recent starts. He found the waters very deep in some of those races at Sam Houston. He was, we're going to say, ambitiously spotted, but his form has really improved now that he's back kind of against his people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that was, Alternate Time and Frank the Mayor, who ran 1-2 last time out. Those are pretty tough customers. It's a $7,500 level, $6,250 level. So I think he had bitten off a little bit more than he could chew in that race. And it certainly played out that way. Dreams of Valor, who you mentioned, of course, is very dangerous. First off the claim for Broberg, having been taken from Diodoro. Broberg's one of the guys I would probably generally excuse this. I still almost as a rule hate seeing a horse claim for 15 and in for 10. I hate seeing them claim for 15 and entered for any less than that, because
Sure.
it's just it's a big red flag that the barn is probably regretting this claim. So I would handle that
Get
one.
the win, get them claimed off you again, and you come out in the green.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if he wins, he's going to get the about 10,000 plus and if he gets claimed, then he's in good shape. So yeah. We'll see if that ends up being how it plays out. One horse I wanted to ask you about was the One Big Power Red. Did you have any affinity for this one? First off the claim by Ronnie Craven, shortening up from a mile to 7/8.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued enough to probably use on a ticket. That last effort was very good. And again, this is a barn that's really sharp off the claim. I think this one's consistent. Decent enough. Yeah, I'd keep him on a ticket for sure.
Yeah, I thought so too. I felt like he could be a late threat. I'm always a sucker for cutbacks. I don't think his 7 furlong race at Sam Houston in early April was bad by any means. I really tried to look through this field to find alternatives. The only one I could make a slight case for is the 7, Analyze This Jet, second off the layoff for Terry Oaf, shortening up from a mile to 7. Did get involved in kind of a hot pace last time out. You just wonder if there's any tread left on the tires. I mean, this is a horse that has now run one time in 2.5 years. That's a bad sign.
Yeah, there are enough red flags there for me. And he used to be kind of a quality horse. He was a stakes type, ran in the Sexton Mile, but those are some big layoffs. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He probably needed one last time. Like the older we get, the harder it is to regain our fitness after coming back off a layoff, can confirm. And,
you can speak to that much better than me.
But it does get harder. And, at 7 years old, he probably does need a race or two to really get himself in racing shape.
And I think if you take that approach and you look at how he ran last time out, he probably didn't run that bad. A mile was going to be...
he showed interest.
Yeah, exactly. He got involved in a relatively hot pace, so a mile was always going to be a little bit more than what he wanted off the bench. I could see him maybe getting a piece of this thing, maybe more of a placing chance than necessarily a winning one, but a horse who, if you have the budgetary capability, you might want to go ahead and include in that 8th race. The nightcap is a mile and a 16th, one other than allowance race on the turf course, and again, expecting the turf to be in perfectly good condition given some of the early week rains. We have horses that have been running well at this level going postward, including the 7 Brock on by, the 6 Aquamine, and Uncle Artie drawn in the 2 spot. I thought this was a tough race.
This is a really tough race. And I think this is the kind of race that could be poised for a little bit of an upset. Uncle Artie, I think, looks very tough, but I'm very interested in Westward Look. First off the claim, back on the turf. That Tampa form was pretty solid. And maybe this is kind of my more of like an East Coast Florida elitist self showing here, but I think that Tampa form's probably very comparable here, and he should fit very well. Has some useful speed. Lane Luzzie has been having a terrific season. I also like it at a very big price. That is the 10 Truly Danzig. This one's going to get way overlooked. And Mindy Willis, Stuart Elliott, these two can pop up at a big price. He needed more last time out for sure, but there's more in there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought Truly Danzig up. Wrong trip last time out, right? Yeah. This is a 1-1 close. Don't put him sitting third, a length and a half off. I don't blame Stewart for wanting to be a little bit more forward. So far at this meet, I think the Lone Star Turf course has generally played a little bit more to front-running types than the Sam Houston course does. Obviously, 2 totally different times a year. And I thought that really negated Truly Danzig's best ability, which is to sit back and make one run. So I can totally see him bouncing back. I agree on Westward Look. I think this is a tremendously interesting claim. Lane is so good on the front end too. I feel as if they're going to be committed to the front, coming out of the gate, stretching out in distance. Kyle Karamori for George Sharp, who had a winner at the meet last week and ran second in a stake race as well. I thought of the ones we mentioned that had recently run well. I like the race that Aquamine and Brock on By are coming out of a little bit more than the one that Uncle Artie's coming out of.
Sure.
Just because Go Speed Racer Go was coming off such a brutal performance at Sam Houston, and he ran so much better that day. It felt like a race that kind of came apart at the seams as well. So I think you probably use those three equally, or you maybe upgrade Brock on By and Aquaman. But I would also use Whiskey Not Wine, who I thought maybe got caught a little too far off of it last time out. I think this is a fun race. I could see myself being 4, 5, even 6 deep, including backups. But it's a good thing because we found a couple of horses I think we can lean on a little earlier.
Yeah, I think we can put together a pretty conservative ticket to start, and then there are a few spots where you do have to spread your opinions a little bit.
We will put our numbers together so that they are available for the In the Money Plus subscribers. Hopefully, we've touched on a few who will help you along the way in this Lone Star Late Pick 5. Jessica, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I will see you. Have a good time in New York, and I'll take care of Texas.
Sounds great. We'll be waiting for you with open arms as always. Thanks again to Jessica Paquette for this segment. Pete is back and up next. Until next time, best of luck.
Next up in the show, very happy to bring in an expert when it comes to all things international racing, particularly the JRA. She's a frequent guest on the shows. She's Candice Hare. Candice, how are things?
Doing well. Another big week of Japanese racing. We've been spoiled lately.
It's true. And I love the crossover now where we're getting to talk about a race that's not just a big deal JRA race with the implications in world racing, but specifically a win and you're in race for the Breeders' Cup. The Yasuda Kinen is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Mile, happening late Saturday night, early Sunday morning in North America, on the East Coast of North America in particular, those timings I just gave. But I want to start from zero and give people an idea. How important is this race in Japan?
It's an important race, but I think in recent years, it's become an important race for horses who do wind up traveling. So I think it's a really smart race to have included in that Breeders' Cup Win and You're In series. You look to past winners like Just Away, Lord Kanaloa, Morris, many horses who we've seen not only travel, but have success abroad. So obviously we're hoping to see maybe a couple of these horses wind up here in America.
Well, that's the idea, and part of the reason why it's so exciting with this Win and You're In program, and especially looking to Japan after the success they had last year. I mean, this is kind of a master of the obvious statement, but I think it's right. You would have to think that the success that the Japanese had at the Breeders' Cup last year is going to lead to more owners and trainers wanting to make challenges specifically at the Breeders' Cup.
I would think so. And I think that there's so much more room to be had there. Obviously, there's a lot of interest from the Japanese in American racing in general. We see that in the Triple Crown series as well. And while they've had success, there are so many races yet left that they can win. So a little bit of everything. But usually in any major international meeting, winning breeds more horses from that country coming.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's a great point about the connection between the two businesses when you look at the Japanese breeding program and how that's been built and continues to be built. Let's talk Turkey. Let's get into the specifics of this year's running. We're several days out here still, so I'm not necessarily going to hold your feet to the fire for a selection. But where is your eye drawn when you look over the prospective runners for this year's field?
Mile races in Japan are always fun because you get that mix of routers, or what we think of as a router in America, and sprinters. So I always treat these mile races kind of like we treat the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. You get that kind of mix of both types of horses. My eye early on is going to a horse named Fine Rouge, who's been very, very consistent in her career thus far. Only once has she not finished in the top 3, but she's yet to kind of crack the code here at the Group 1 level. I think this could be her race. Should set up well for her from the horses I see in here pace-wise. And this is a race where it's males against the female horses. And we've seen mares recently in this race have a ton of success. So Fine Rouge, the one my eye's going to.
What kind of price are we expecting?
I'd be hoping for maybe about 6 to 8.
A square price, to say the least. And looking at the body of this field, including the tip, which horses do you think might be most likely to make a raid to our shores here in North America if they're successful?
I think inherently your eye usually goes to horses who have already traveled. So you look to a horse like Schnellmeister, who's, I would say, likely to be your favorite. He was second in this race last year behind Gran Allegria. We saw him over in Dubai. He certainly did not perform up to expectations there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him another crack at it. The other one could be Songline if she showed up. Obviously, we saw her win over in Saudi Arabia. She's a horse who maybe a soft, mile or a little bit further would be perfect for her. And usually we find those conditions in America. I think she's the type of horse who's shown herself to be advantaged by a flat track. And those are a little bit harder to come by in Japan. So Songline of these is probably the most likely, I would say, to turn up.
Great stuff. We appreciate your insights on this. We'll get more from you and the rest of the team covering the JRA races over at inthemoneypodcast.com on Saturday. There will be past performances. There will be selections. There will be further analysis. And Candice, we will bother you again very soon to come on these airwaves to chat about the JRA and everything related to international racing. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Pete.
That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Would like to thank all of the guests who appeared, our founding partners, Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, 10 Strike Racing. Really appreciate their help and support as well. Most of all, though, want to thank you, the listeners, the viewers who make these shows so much fun to do. Final reminder to keep abreast of everything going on In the Money Media Network. Sign up for our free newsletter, inthemoneypodcast.com/free. And if you want more, sign up for our premium service. Great value, $15 a month. And you get a bunch of extra content, little digest of all the picks, etc., etc. inthemoneypodcast.com/plus for that one. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos